Hello, hello. I just want to wait for some more people to come. I'm late, but hopefully some people will pop up. Got one person here, so I want to talk to you guys about this book here, Robert Blecker's The Death of Punishment, which I finished reading a couple of days ago. Guess we'll get some lighting here. Got 3 people on here. Gonna wait for some more people to show up. 4 people on. Six people on. Okay, now we're good. Hello, Juan. Juan. Got 5 people on here. 4 people now. Okay, so I'm going to start talking. 6 people on. That's basically a party. So I'm going to start talking. I could not do my normal Friday live stream because something popped up and I got really occupied. Hello, Matt Mick. So I want to do a book review for this book, The Death of Punishment by Professor Robert Blecker. Very good book, very engaging. It's a very engaging read. So Robert Blecker is a professor of law at the New York Law School, I think it's called, or the New York School of Law. Professor at New York Law School, that's right. And he spent a number of years really getting down into the gritty details of the gritty details of death row in America. And he went to multiple different prisons in the United States. He went to Oklahoma, he went to Tennessee, Alabama, I think Louisiana, North Carolina. He went to numerous different prisons in the United States, and he wanted to study the condition of death row inmates because one of the main arguments of the abolitionist of the death penalty, people who want to abolish the death penalty completely, is that people who live on death row are miserable and they're being punished simply because they're in death row, and living in this enforced solitude is awful. It's terrible. And he went there and he saw people who were absolutely monsters, people who murdered and raped children, people who murdered entire families, people who, well, in one example, he met a guy in death row who was one of the murderers of the Pettit family in Connecticut. And in that case was especially egregious, just given the way that the victims were murdered and the cruelty that was demonstrated, or the cruelty that was done to the Pettit family. I believe there were 2 daughters, husband and wife. One of them was raped, and then the children were strapped onto mattresses covered in gasoline or some kind of flammable liquid, and they were lit on fire. They were set ablaze. One of them died from inhaling smoke, and the other one burned alive. The wife was murdered. The husband escaped and ran away, which was, I mean, kind of unthinkable, but that's what happened. There were 2 men who were involved in that murder, and one of them, uh, Mr. Blecker met in prison. And there was this guy, overweight, uh, laying down on his bed in his cell with Hershey bars and a bag of potato chips. How's that punishment? That's not punishment. He met one guy who strangled who raped a young girl. I think she was 8 or 9 years old, and then choked her to death with a shoelace. Um, and Robert Blecker interviewed him while he was in prison in death row. Uh, and this guy was playing games with his friends, and I think he was watching television, and that's not punishment. So, what Blecker concluded through his investigation was that the worst of the worst criminals in the United States are actually treated the best. They have color televisions, they can play games, they have recreational time, they can participate in physical activities. They are given the best treatment in America's prison system. And we hear a lot about how America's criminal justice system is so broken, and it's criminals are treated awful, and all this stuff. And the reality is that I agree that America's criminal justice system has its issues, but I don't think it has my complaints regarding America's criminal justice system is not the same complaints as those people. Those people, when they speak of the criminal justice system being broken, they always say it in the context of racism in prison, or how blacks are disproportionately arrested. It's or they're disproportionately apprehended by police. I don't really get into that subject because I think that for the most part it's lacking in substance. Um, but my problem with the criminal justice system is that we don't treat the worst of the worst criminals harshly enough. We don't make them suffer. They need to suffer for what they have done. They need a punishment that fits the crime. And it's interesting that we always hear, when it comes to punishment by the state, we will always hear the mantra of how the crime must fit the punishment, and the crime must be proportionate to, or the punishment must be proportionate to the crime. And I agree with that, but that's not what's happening. When you have mass murderers, when you have child rapists and child murderers, literally literally uh just living like they're in a hotel, that is not punishment. It's just not. I will answer all of your guys' questions when I'm done. But just as a side note, yes, I have heard of the Black Dolphin. Yes, I did see that documentary. um Now, if we want to put, and Blecker deals with this, what if we got rid of the death penalty, but we still have a retributivist position when it comes to punishment? And Blecker doesn't say that this is the ideal option, but he affirms that if we were to have life in prison without parole, under a hold on, I have this freaking cat. My God, so annoying. Go, leave, 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 leave. This is the problem with doing live stuff. But this cat, she's never satisfied. Always wants to go in, wants to go out. Let me back in. Wants to go out. It drives me crazy. But going on, resuming from where I left off, Robert Blecker does speak of the other option, which is life without parole. Um, Life without parole, but under a retributivist philosophy or policy. So retributivism, or the retributivist position, is that some crimes are so atrocious and egregious that there must be there must be a harsh punishment. That person really doesn't deserve that many rights. Once he is found guilty, he forfeits his rights, because it's been proven that he committed this crime in which he violated the liberty and the right to life of others. So therefore, he loses his liberty and he loses his own right to live. Now, there is the mainstream position when it comes to justice, and that is that uh, that prison must have a utilitarian a utilitarian purpose. So utilitarianism is basically everything that is done must have a use. It must have a a, a benefit to society. So the purpose of prison in in a utilitarian world is that the criminal must be put in prison, and once he's in prison, that's the job of the state because now he's no longer a danger to society. So the utilitarian point of view does not take into account retribution. It just says, well, what policy has a fulfilled purpose, and that is, well, the purpose is to remove the danger. So therefore, he is now in prison. He is no longer a danger to others. The purpose of the policy has been fulfilled. There is no interest in the idea of retribution. In the retributivist position, it's that the person must be punished because he has done a crime and a balance must be maintained in society. If you murdered somebody and you did it in this horrendous way and you killed, I mean, you were just cruel, sadistic person, you must be punished not from solely a utilitarian standpoint, but also just out of the principle of justice itself. So Blecker's book is it's not so much a technical book as it is a philosophical work. Blecker does get into the technical aspect of the law, but more so in the beginning of the book and in the appendixes at the end. Most of the book is from an emotional and philosophical point of view, which I greatly appreciate. Because one thing that I think so much of our society lacks is philosophy is really the principles from an emotional perspective. Um, if you go to the liberal side or the abolitionist perspective, there's a dominating point of view that says the death penalty should be abolished because it costs too much money. It should be abolished because it has no purpose. The person's in prison for the rest of his life. He's no longer a threat. So what's the point of capital punishment? And it doesn't prevent crime. So these are all technical arguments, analytical arguments, and it's not all untrue. So, for example, does the death penalty prevent crime? Well, they say that it doesn't, right? It hasn't been proven to be a deterrence. Now, that argument is not exactly black and white because, for example, the city that has the highest murder rate in the country, the region of America that has the highest murder rate is Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. has the highest murder rate in the United States, and it doesn't have the death penalty. So people being put in prison obviously doesn't act or doesn't um, function as an adequate deterrence either. So that argument is pretty much thrown out the window. Furthermore, there have been situations in which criminals will actually murder in states that don't have the death penalty. So, for example, he lists he references a lifer in one part of the book that said that he committed his murder in I think it was in Washington D.C. as opposed to the state of Virginia because he knew that Virginia had the death penalty and he didn't want to be executed. So, and also furthermore, Blecker states that there have been studies that have shown that it does actually act as a deterrence. Now, what I have heard, and this is not in Blecker's book, but I've heard this. I actually heard this from David Pakman because he is a complete abolitionist, and he did a debate on the death penalty. And he stated in the debate that what the studies show is not really that the death penalty acts as doesn't act as a deterrence, or that life in prison doesn't act as a deterrence. What the studies show is that what truly acts as a deterrence is the swiftness of the punishment. So the reason why and Blecker, I'm pretty certain he talks about this. I don't remember, but what makes the death penalty in America not function as an adequate deterrence is the appellate court, is the right to appeal. And the biggest cause of death for death rowers, if I can use that terminology, is not the death penalty. It's actually natural causes. Most people on death row will not die on the electric chair or through lethal injection or by firing squad. Most death rowers will die from heart disease or cancer or some other natural cause of death. The reason for this is because death rowers can simply continuously appeal. The argument that the death penalty is too expensive is also dubious at best because it doesn't take into account that the reason why the death penalty is expensive is not because of the execution itself. I mean, anybody with some common sense would know that an execution is not going to be expensive. The reason why the death penalty is expensive is because of the appeals. The constant appeals is what costs a lot of money. And that's where the high price of capital punishment comes from, is the right to appeal. Um, Now, the point of view that Blecker comes from is one that emanates from emotion uh, and a philosophy of justice. So when you speak of emotions, immediately people start saying, well, it's not about emotions, it's about facts. And I think that this is really an insincere, I want to say bad faith approach, because human beings are emotional by their very nature. We are emotional beings, and our emotions and our intuition, our gut instinct is what really acts as a signal to us that tells us when something is wrong. When someone is vicious towards you, you have an emotional response. It comes from outside stimuli. When you see something that's atrocious, you have an emotional reaction to it. You have something in your gut that tells you that this is wrong. So let's say you walked into a church, and or that's a place that called itself a church, and there were signs that immediately uh, conveyed to you that there are signs that immediately convey to you that you're in a cult, right? You would have some kind of stirring within your gut. I mean, we have emotional responses to things, and this is something that stems from reality. So when people say, "Well, facts over feelings," I think that this is just a really wrong approach, because our emotions come from something that's real. Our emotions come from something that's real. Now, emotions must be contained, but they must be contained within reality, right? For lack of better words. Um, and so when we see injustice, we feel we have negative emotions. So there's nothing wrong with wanting someone who is extremely evil and atrocious to die. There's nothing wrong with saying that certain people have forfeited their right to life. There's nothing wrong with saying that some people have forfeited their right to liberty. Uh, now, now the abolitionists on the other side, they also have their own emotional argument, and that is that the death penalty is that the death penalty is an injustice, and they will do candlelight visuals, and they will conduct protests in defense of people who do the worst of crimes, people who murder children, people who rape and murder children, people who kill families. They will actually defend those people under the guise of compassion. Now, they don't give a shit about the people who were murdered. They just care about the person who is about to be executed. And they will use very bad faith arguments, such as that the execution of a criminal is murder. It's not murder, it's an execution. And the reason why their approach is just illogical is that if you were to take their position, you would have to agree that every killing is murder, and that's just not the case. Um, eh, Certain killing is not murder. There's self defense, so not everything is murder. And they say that it's murder because the person is defenseless. Well, is the prison part of the problem also? Because the reason why they're defenseless is because they're in prison, because they have forfeited their right to be in a society. And if you leave them in prison, they're going to die in prison. So would you say it's death by prison? They died because they were stuck in prison, or there's many different holes that pop up in their line of reasoning. And they say that, well, if you execute the person, that it's murder. It's like, well, that's not murder. Somebody who breaks into a family's home and slaughters the entire family, rapes the daughter, kills her, lights the daughter on fire, and then that person gets arrested and then he is executed. That's not the same thing as what he did. But then they will make these weird arguments saying that they're one and the same, that the state killing this person is the same type of crime that that person committed, and it's just obvious nonsense. They're two different actions. You can't compare the two. They're just totally different. Um, and then they'll say, well, if you kill this person, then you have taken away his dignity. It's a violation of human dignity. Well, if you stick him in prison for the rest of his life, is that a violation of human liberty? So it's just nonsense. But overall, enjoyed this book very much. It's one of the few books out there that defends the death penalty, that defends capital punishment. Um, I highly recommend it if you are interested in the subject and if you're interested in the debate on capital punishment. So it's called The Death of Punishment by Robert Blecker. I want to email him actually and see if he can come on this channel. Who knows? But very good book. I will give this book a 10 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. So yeah. Um, Certain lines maybe I'll read. I don't know. I did a lot of underlining in this book. I did a lot of underlining. Maybe I can read some parts of it. But he quotes from the book of Exodus. So, for example, whoever strikes a man so that he die shall be put to death. But if he did not lie in wait for him, then I will appoint for you a place to which he may flee and save his life, lest the avenger of blood. So, the Bible even gets into the nuances of certain situations and looking at, different circumstances. First degree murder as opposed to second degree murder, premeditated murder as opposed to manslaughter. But yeah, and Blecker does get into the other option, which is life in prison without parole. But he says that if you want to do life in prison without parole, the only food that the prisoner shall eat is I forget the name of it, but it's basically it's like a not a candy bar. It's like a fiber bar that has no flavor in it. Um, they shouldn't have any time outside. They should literally be locked into a cell. I think, and I agree with Blecker. Blecker actually promotes this in the end of the book. I think we should have public executions for people who do egregious crimes. And I agree with Blecker when he says that before the execution, when this person is living in a cell, he should be surrounded by the photographs of his victim. And before the execution, there should be a video detailing and documenting the life of the victim. Family members of the victim shall be allowed to do should be allowed to do speeches, and there should be an entire message conveyed to the community that what this person has done is an extremely big deal that should not be taken lightly. This person has no rights, and we should make a ceremony out of it because it's an absolute injustice what the person has done. And that injustice is so great that the organization of the ceremony should convey that message out. So now we're getting into the St. Paul argument. Well, St. Paul actually said himself that if he committed crimes worthy of death, then he shall not protest against the death penalty. So what do you say to that, Juan? Oh goodness. Um, what is prison food like? I don't know. They eat TV dinners. You're already preaching to the choir. Plenty of people worldwide agree on the death penalty for the worst crimes. I've talked to plenty. Okay, well that's good. But we need to. I mean, those people should be pushing for a reversal of what many states in the United States have done, and that is get rid of the death penalty. We shouldn't have that. I think that's a great idea. I'm glad you agree. They want to use the St. Paul argument, and it's just nonsense. Well, St. Paul uh, preached the gospel. So does that mean that people in prison, if they have a conversion, they should be allowed to preach the gospel? You should just release them from prison? Oh, I'm not saying that. Well, if you want to use the life of Paul as an argument, you better be prepared for people to bring up other aspects of his life that would um, really stick holes in your argument. So then we shouldn't put people in prison then, because if you want to use the life of Paul, then we shouldn't put people in prison. Because I mean, if you're against the death penalty, then I mean, I'm sure you're in favor for prison, right? So we should have put Paul in prison then. If you're, I mean, you believe in people putting people in prison. Death penalty. So a lot of the cases I've looked into, like Rodney Reed and Kevin Cooper, are actually 100% guilty. So I'm not in favor of killing innocent people. As a person who subscribes to the retributivist position, I mean, why would I want to put innocent people in death row? I'm glad you bought the book. So we really can't prove 100% if people who have been executed were innocent, but we probably have executed innocent people. Very, very small number. I would say that something like that. And if you look at the people that we have executed, possibly wrongfully, I would say that I would say, my goodness, people are spamming my good grief. Hold on a second, guys. I gotta. Yeah, I got somebody spamming my stuff here. Oh my gosh, doesn't end. I would say that the people who were executed wrongfully, I mean, when were they executed, right? And what I would say is that if we're going to execute people, it needs to be 100% certain, 100% certain that these people did it. So, for example, we know for a fact Ted Bundy did it. We know for a fact Dahmer did it. We know for a fact that Charles Ng and his partner, what was his name? Um, Leonard Leonard Lake. We know those guys did it. So we need to be 100% certain. I mean, execution is a very big deal. So that's what I would say to that. Would you be interested in debating someone on the crucible about the death penalty? I'm in favor of it, but decline to debate the leftist utilitarian. If you want to get me to debate somebody, I mean, you can write me on Facebook. I have a public page. Write me on there, and we can set something up. Who's the who's the person that has the who has the abolitionist position? The Crucible. What kind of channel is that? Let's see. Is that a YouTube channel or what? Crucible. Oh, this is a liberal channel, it seems. Oh, it's one of those debate bro channels. I mean, you can find me on Facebook, my public page, Theodore Ted Schubot, and send me something. Send me something, and we can set something up. So that's it. Don't worry about it. I'm just doing a book review. A lot of people exaggerate the number of actually innocent people on death row. Here's the thing about um here's the thing about when people say what's the what's the word? When people say I forgot what I was going to say. Goodness me, I'm getting old. Death penalty does apply to the worst of the worst. Oh yeah, now I remember what I was going to say. So when people say, "Oh yeah, like there's a chance that an innocent person," well, we risk lives all the time. We build roads knowing that people could get into a car accident and die on them. We take risks all the time. We build streets knowing that there's a chance that people are going to get ran over. We have hospitals knowing there's a chance that that surgeons are going to make mistakes and people are going to die. Like if we're willing to risk lives for the cause of convenience, then we should be able to have a very short or very, very small risk in the cause of justice, is what I would say. I mean, I could easily just say that there are people who are wrongfully imprisoned. I mean, there's always going to be this chance. I don't know. Juan Isaac is just changing the subject. I got him on the St. Paul thing. Now he's talking about something else. This is the problem with debating people is that when you get them on something, they will always try to like change the subject or widen the goalpost or whatever. Like, oh, let's talk about Saudi Arabia now. Like, okay, your St. Paul argument just fell to pieces because it was nonsense. But now let me just change the subject. Okay, we had an Iowan federally executed. Um, in July 2020. He was extremely heinous. His girlfriend was just as bad. She had her execution lifted because she was a woman. Are you surprised that none of these leftist debate bros will ever expose Dennis Prager for defending pedophilia? Yeah, I always found that interesting. Like they hate Dennis Prager, but none of them ever attacked him on this because they're like, well, he's pro-gay. Oh, that's great. We're having a philosophical argument. Yeah, sure, it's an argument, but when you bring up the same poll argument and then I show you the gaps in your argument and you just switch the subject to Saudi Arabia, I mean, it kind of tells me that you're not really talking out of good faith here. I mean, we have police officers who shoot and kill people. Is there a chance that a cop could kill the wrong person? Yes, but we still allow for that to happen. We allow for risk to happen. But I mean, with forensic evidence, with the type of methods that we have, we need to make sure 100% that a person is guilty. Now, if a person is 100% guilty, um, then he should be justly punished. I'm not in favor for innocent people being executed, and I don't. To me, I think this argument is just a red herring. Like, what about innocent people? It's like, well, I mean, of course, I'm not in favor for innocent people, but I believe that, like, what if, like, this is my response to this? Okay, what if we know that a person is 100% guilty? Would you be in favor for the death penalty? Well, like what if we had a policy where we have to make sure 100% people are, this guy is absolutely guilty. Would you be in favor for killing him? Well, no, I won't. Okay, so then this argument that you have is meaningless, because we're not talking about should a death penalty be allowed for the protection of the innocent. We're talking about should people who do egregious crimes be executed. That's what we're arguing for. We're not talking about possible mistakes that could happen. We're not talking about the risk of innocent people being killed. We're talking about, is it just for a person who commits an egregious crime to be executed? Now, if you know for certain that a person has done this crime, would you be in favor for his execution? You know for a fact he's done it. Would you be in favor for his execution? Well, no, I won't be. Okay, so your point of view isn't about defending the innocent. It's just that you don't want the state to execute people, even if they have done the worst of the worst. That's just the bottom line. With DNA as part of law enforcement tools now, I would guess very few innocent people are wrong unless they're set up. Anyone who murdered their spouse simply because they cheated is in self-defense. Yes, human error, absolutely. There's going to be a risk for human error in everything. In everything. From going to a restaurant and getting a wrong order to paying your taxes, and the IRS thinks that you haven't paid it even though you have, and it's just that the system is so backlogged they haven't gotten it yet. To police officers making mistakes, to the fire department could any system is going to be making a mistake. You're always going to find gaps, no matter what. No matter what system of justice you have. Okay, well, we're going to put them in life in prison. Well, you could have people who are wrongfully put in life. Well, we should get rid of life in prison. So what? So some guy who murders a whole family should get, what, 20 years and then put back on the street? You can't be this ridiculous. I'm in favor for the death penalty in Canada. Thank you. I agree. The death penalty should be in every country. Every country should have the death penalty. Well, what about Saudi Arabia? Well, if Saudi Arabia is killing people who deserve it, then yes, God bless them. I don't care. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. But see, this is the problem with arguing with people. Nobody wants to argue in good faith. If somebody says, I don't agree with you because of this, you say, well, this is why I think you're mistaken. What do people do? They will change the subject. They will try to do a whataboutism, or they'll widen the goalposts. That's basically what everybody does. Well, what about this? Okay, well, we can deal with that. Okay, well, let me give you another category they haven't dealt with. It's like, well, can we engage with what I'm saying here? Yeah, I think it should be. I mean, it goes without saying that if you're going to if you're going to execute somebody, you have to make sure without a doubt that the person did it. Great example: Charles Ng and Leonard Lake. Leonard Lake, and literally filmed himself abusing his victims. He built a bunker for his victims. Like, we know for a fact that this guy did it. I wonder if the death penalty was abolished, how many evil people would commit heinous murders versus how many would not have they fear the death penalty. I just don't want our tax dollars being wasted on the worst of the worst in prison. We could save money, sure. We could save money. We can just get a tall tree and a short rope. Isn't the death penalty pretty similar to life in prison anyway? Most people sit on death row for over. No, it's not the same thing. And if it's the same thing, then why even use that argument? I could say, well, isn't the death penalty is the same as death row? So why put him in death row? Why don't we just kill him? And the reason why also it's not the same is because human beings are very adaptable. If some guy lost his legs, he would still find meaning in life. If some guy is in a cell for the rest of his life, he's going to find meaning and purpose in that. He's going to find activities. He's going to find enjoyment. The policy of the American prison complex is not one of punishment. It is one of utility. It's about keeping everybody in the prison and making sure that everything is safe for the prisoners and for the guards. That's what it is. If you look at the mission statements of numerous prisons in the United States, it will explicitly say our purpose is not punishment. It doesn't talk about punishment. It talks about keeping order in prison. So how do you keep order in prison? Got to give the prisoners perks, got to give them stuff. So here you have somebody who murdered an entire family and he's got Hershey bars in his cells. Somebody who raped a 9-year-old girl and strangled her to death, he can play games and have recreational activity. No, that's not the same as death. Obviously not. And you'd think people would have enough sense to be like, yeah, that's not the same thing. America is a violent society. We are not a we have a culture of violence. And I think that's one of the reasons why America seems to be a little bit more violent than the European Union, because we have a culture of violence in this country. And that's the problem. That's one of the sources. Now, the death penalty, neither the death penalty nor life in prison really are an adequate solution to the crime problems in the United States. That's a much deeper problem that requires a deeper solution. It requires an entire change in societal thinking and culture. It's like abortion. We could have a punishment for abortion, but would that get rid of abortion? It may decline it in some way, may decline the numbers in some way, but people are still going to have abortions. Or like drugs, like we could prescribe punishment for drugs, but is it going to get rid of drug use? No. So punishment doesn't necessarily mean solution, especially if it is an endemic problem in the society. It's a symptom of a greater problem that requires a deeper solution. So I wouldn't say that the death penalty is a solution to America's crime problem. I would say but neither is life in prison. I would say that requires a deeper reformation in society. You would actually be surprised just how many people want to abolish prisons completely. Yeah, I agree. You would be shocking, especially with the popularity of anarchism. Yeah, it's unfortunate that I came to this live stream late, because I would have some of our Eastern European friends on board here, but they're not on. They're probably sleeping or whatever, reading about Ukraine. Who knows? Sup, Christian Estrada. What else is new? Anyway, let's talk about whatever you guys want. I don't know. I think I'm done, or what? It's inhumane to keep violent criminals in a cage, and it doesn't put the fear of the Lord into the hearts of man. Oh, Lord. Oh, I agree with you. It's biblical. I think some people deserve prison and not the death penalty. If you steal something, I wouldn't say you deserve death. I would say you deserve prison. But if you look at one thing I appreciate about Blecker's book is that he comes with an emotional argument, an emotions-based argument, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think we actually need more emotion in society. We don't have enough of it, actually, because we get stirred up. We get stirred up when we see injustice, and I think if we don't get stirred up, there's something wrong with us. There's something deeply wrong with us. There's plenty of neo-Nazis on the Russian side. They are neo-Nazis in Russia. I've never denied that. My point about Ukraine wasn't that Russia is innocent. And this is, man, I think I need to say this in every single video, because here's one of the problems with doing a video or doing a debate or doing any sort of activity that involves conveying a message. This is why Americans pre-qualify so damn much. Americans, I'm telling you, this is the reason why. And maybe it's the same in other countries, but in America, when somebody makes a statement, they always have to say the pre-qualifiers, right? The pre-qualifications. Well, I'm not saying dot dot dot. Now, before I say this, let me first say dot dot dot. I'm not saying all dot 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 are dot dot dot, because when you make a statement, people will tell you things that really go without saying. They'll tell you things that are obvious. Like I said in my video about the Bayraktar, which has like 11,000 views, 13,000 views last I checked, which is crazy. I didn't expect it to get that many views. But I did a video about the Turkish Bayraktar drone. And in that video, I addressed something that I have noticed that actually disturbs me. And that is that people will watch videos of drones killing people and they will say, this is awesome. And I said that we're acting as though when we watch these videos of drones killing people, we're acting as though we're watching a video game. And we're not watching a video game. We're watching literally people being slaughtered. That's what we're watching. So when you watch these Russian soldiers getting killed, you're looking at soldiers who could be 19 years old, never seen combat, and they just left mom and dad's house, and now they're dead. You're not, because their government forced them into this war. They're not uh in a video game. This is like human life being slaughtered. And I said that when I see these videos, I feel saddened by it. I do. I feel saddened by it. And I had a bunch of people come on and say, well, guns kill people too. Well, no freaking shit. No one's saying that. It's like, and then I have to say, I never said that guns don't. It's like I have to sit there and make all these stupid statements to a non-argument. So it's like, in order for me to do a video, I have to say an entire list of pre-qualifiers. I'm not saying that guns don't kill people. I'm not saying that rockets don't kill people. I'm not saying that shells don't kill people. I'm not saying that poison doesn't kill people. I'm not saying that knives don't kill people. I'm not saying that baseball bats don't kill people. I'm not saying that that crowbars don't kill people. I'm not saying that human hands don't kill people. I'm not saying that dogs don't kill people. I'm not saying that bears don't kill people. So now and then if even if I said that, somebody would say, "But snakes kill people." Oh, I forgot. I'm not saying that snakes don't kill people. Not saying that nuclear bombs haven't killed anybody. Not saying that I believe 100% that America was right when it droned people. Not saying, like, literally all I said was, when I see these videos, something in me has compassion. I had a human response to it, because I know for a fact that a lot of these Russian soldiers are just 19-year-old guys who've never seen combat, probably very undertrained, and just left mom and dad's house. And now they're forced into this war. I feel bad for those soldiers, just like I felt bad because the Iraq war is over. I felt bad for American soldiers who got blown up by IEDs. And you could make this, well, it's not their country. They're not Iraqis. America invaded Iraq. So, here's the consequence. I still feel sorry for them, because a lot of these American guys join the military because they had this idea that it's the patriotic duty or whatever, and they go to Iraq and they end up freaking dead. And now their mom and dad get, in Lebanon, there were all these Marines in Lebanon. How many hundreds of Marines died in Lebanon? Because some lunatic got into his car and drove into an army base and blew himself, a military base, and blew himself up and killed 200 something Marines. Well, it's not their country. They should not have been in Lebanon. It's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's their country. I'm saying that when I hear that, I feel bad for those people. It's a human response. But apparently you can't have a human response anymore. Apparently you have to take sides. You have to always take an extreme position to everything. If you criticize Ukraine, you're pro-Russia. If you criticize Nazis in Ukraine, all of a sudden I have to be told about every single Nazi in every single other country. So I have to say in every single video, I'm not saying this, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying this to appeal to everybody. But my point of view is, screw that, because I want to say what I want to say, because I believe what I'm saying is right. Here we go. Okay, Ukrainian Nazis are not that relevant. Well, let me tell you this. The president of Ukraine is Jewish, okay? Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky, even though he is a Jew, he actually will praise historical figures who slaughtered Jews and worked with the Nazis. The Ukrainian parliament will declare members of the OUN, which was an uh, ultra-nationalist Ukrainian organization. I mean, the OUN literally stands for Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists. The Parliament of Ukraine will declare OUN as a heroic organization. The and also the Ukrainian Parliament will declare the birthday of Stepan Bandera as a national holiday. Now, I'm not saying every Ukrainian is a Banderist, but there has to be at least a substantial amount of people in the Ukrainian population who agree with that for the parliament to do something like that. Secondly, or thirdly, I should say, the Ukrainian government literally banned a movie about what the Ukrainian fascists did or Ukrainian ultranationalists did back in 1943. Now, if you're not really, if you don't have forget Nazi, if you don't have a Ukrainian ultra nationalist problem, then why would that film be banned? Just a thought. I don't expect people to actually answer my question. People are gonna, I don't know, widen the goalpost. What about Russia? They want a whataboutism all day. So it's like if I say, you know what, I see people dying, I just feel bad for those people. But what about other? It's like, you know, when I see these videos of people getting slaughtered, I feel bad for them. What about other people being sold? What about them? Well, it's like I feel bad for them too. I did a video saying that I feel bad for Ukrainians who get killed in the shell fire. I did the video. I did that video saying that. I have done my criticism of Russia. I have. I've written articles critical of Russia. Um, if anybody wants to talk to me about Russia, let's talk about the Steinmeier formula and how Russia actually wants to split Ukraine up, which is not a good idea. But you know, anyway, let's talk about every damn thing that Russia does. If I complained about Russia all day, let's say I just complain about Russia all day, right? I just complain about Russia all day, and that's all I did. I just said Russia's bad, Putin is bad, Putin evil. Would any of these people who want to downplay the Ukrainian ultra nationalist problem say to me, "Well, Ted, what about Ukraine?" I want to know that. Because all the people who want to give me what about it, and this is the thing, when people use whataboutism as their recourse, as their recourse response, the question I ask them is, well, if it was the other way around and I was talking about the other side all day, if I was talking about the whataboutism that you just brought up all day, would you say, but Ted, what about this? Would you bring up the subject y- that that I'm talking about, that I initially spoke about? So if I just talked about Russia all day, would you be saying, Ted, what about Ukraine? If I said Putin is bad, Putin is evil, Putin is this, Putin is that, Ukraine is an innocent country, would any of you guys look at me and say, hey, Ted, Ukraine isn't innocent. Look at some of the issues in Ukraine. Look at the people that are getting arms from us. Look at some of these militia groups in Ukraine. Would you be telling me that? I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think that when people do whataboutisms, they're simply trying to impose their bias upon you. They want you to talk about what they want to talk about. And that is in accordance to their own prejudice or their own bias. If somebody hates Russia, they're going to want you to talk about Russia. And if you say something about Ukraine, they're going to whataboutism to Russia. If I talk about just Russia, these people would never say, but Ted, what about Ukraine? See, and that's why I don't like about whataboutisms. It's a manipulative way to try to forcefully shift the conversation to fit your own bias. That's that's what it is. I'm pretty sure every post-Soviet country has issues with how they view certain Nazi collaborators. Okay. See, and this is another thing. He brought up Ukraine, and I addressed some of the issues that I have presented in regards to Ukraine. What Leslie has done here, Robert Leslie has done here, is now generalize the issue. Last year, and if you guys want to look at this, I encourage you to do so. Last year, I did a video about manipulation, manipulation that is done in debate or in a conversation. And the formula that I describe is very simple. If you bring up a generalization, somebody will respond to that with a specific. So if I say, um, I think that there is an ultra nationalist problem in Ukraine, somebody will bring up a specific. Somebody will say, well, this one guy in Russia is a Nazi, or let's bring up the Wagner mercenary group, or let's talk about, exactly specifically how many numbers of Nazis there are in Ukraine. So then I respond with a set of specifics. Let's talk about what the Ukrainian parliament has done. Let's talk about the banning of this film. Let's talk about the fact that Zelensky himself has to pay lip service to fascist collaborators. I just brought up specific examples. What has Mr. Leslie done here? He has responded with a generalization. Literally, I have been debating people and arguing with people since I was in junior high. That's how long I've been doing this. I was arguing with students. I was arguing with teachers. This continued on into high school. Outside, and then when I graduated high school, I got into YouTube when I was a junior in high school. So, but when I got out of high school, I started doing debates on the radio. I started doing debates online, and this is literally what I have dealt with every damn time. If you bring up a generality, somebody will respond to you with a specific, because they want to use specifics to cancel out your generalization. Well, your generality is wrong because blah. It's like I did this video and I said that the Bayraktar drone was used against the Kurds, and that's the word that I use. That's the words that I use. The Kurds, and of course, by the Kurds, I mean the YPG and the PKK. That's what I meant. But I didn't say the YPG and the PKK. I said the Kurds. But even when you read an article about the PKK or the YPG, people will use the term, well, the Kurds, and the Kurds have, etc., or America has turned its back on the Kurds or whatever. And some Turkish guy comes in and says, well, don't you know that there's actually like Arab members in I think he said in the YPG or whatever. And it's like, what was that? I said a general statement, the Kurds. And to try to make me look like an idiot, he says, well, there's some Arab members there. It's like, well, sure, there's some Arab members there. Sure. I'm pretty sure you can find a black guy who's friends with the KKK. But when you look at the YPG and the PKK, these are overwhelmingly Kurdish organizations. It just goes without saying. So this is literally what everybody does, right? If you make a general statement, somebody brings up a specific. If you bring up a specific example, somebody brings up a generalization. It's like once you know this, then you can anticipate every damn thing your opponent will do. Everything somebody you can predict it like clockwork. Okay? It's like holy gospel to these people. So here's another example. Here's another example. I just thought of an example and it just left my brain. I brought up the Kurds. If I say there's an Islamic problem, and somebody's going to say, well, yeah, but there's this really nice Muslim guy down the street. It's like, well, I'm not talking about him. Like I'm talking about the problem with Islamic fundamentalism. But it's almost like you have to pre-qualify, and everybody wants you to pre-qualify everything, and they want it. And the reason why is because they want to control your speech. That's really what it comes down to. Not saying like no one can just say what they want to say because some guy comes over and says, "What about this? You forgot this." It's like that song. What was that song back from the '90s? They used to play it on morning radio. You gotta be fine. You gotta be strong. You gotta be. Like, give me a break, man. Oh, here we go. Here's another example. There's an ultranationalist problem in both Ukraine and Russia. See? There we go. Now we have to talk about Russia. So if I just talked about ultranationalism in Russia all day, would you actually tell me, Ted, there's an ultranationalism problem in Ukraine? Would you tell me that? That's what I want to know. I'm not really dealing with your argument. because I already know what you believe. I simply want to deal with your style of argumentation. That's pretty much what I've come down to. Like, I don't even care about arguing about ideas anymore. I don't, because I know that everybody has their ideas. It's nearly impossible to convince anybody of anything. I like to focus on manipulation and how people argue. Because when you say, what about Russia? Now you're just shifting the entire discussion to Russia. So we just got to talk about Russia all day. We have to be literal Cold Warriors from the 1950s now. Can't talk about Ukraine. And here's the thing, America's not arming Russia. My country, and yes, I will speak as though I am just a American flag waver. My country is giving Stinger missiles, heat-seeking missiles, and anti-tank weapons to Ukraine. I am worried about whose hands those weapons get to. I am worried about who we are supporting over there. America's not supporting Russia. Now, if America was supporting Russia, then I would be very concerned about helping a group like the Wagner mercenary group, because we know there are Nazis in the Wagner group, or helping some crazy far right racist Russian militia or something like that. I would be concerned about those things, and I would be talking about it a lot more. But what we have here is not me being biased towards Ukraine. What we have here is the most powerful country in the world helping Ukraine. And I simply want people to look at the dark realities of Ukrainian society. But Ted, there's good things about. I'm not saying there's nothing good about Ukrainian society. Okay, yeah, we can agree with that. Listen, Robert, I'm not saying you're a bad guy. I'm just giving you my thoughts on your comments. That's what I'm doing here. So if America was helping, let's say America was giving tons of weapons to Russia, like, because let's say we wanted to support some revolutionary group in Russia to overthrow Putin. I'd be like, well, hold on a second. Who are we arming here? It's like when America gave weapons and support to the Al Haq organization in from Iran, the People's Mujahideen of Iran. They are a literal cult. They want to overthrow the government in Iran, and they're bad news. But America supports them 100%. They're an Iranian organization. I have talked about that group many times. I've done videos on them. I've written about them. I am very concerned about America supporting that group, because if a revolution happens in Iran, it could lead to more suffering than good. Syrian revolution, we gave tons of weapons. We funneled weapons into Syria. We've trained insurgents in Syria. Well, who are we training? Who are we? You know what I'm saying? I believe there is such a thing as a legitimate concern as to who your country is helping. Who are we helping in Ukraine? What kind of beliefs do they have? What kind of beliefs do they have? I think that these are legitimate concerns to have. Yeah. Well, you know what? If listen, the GDP of Texas is bigger than Russia's GDP. Okay. Yeah, America has backed the wrong party numerous times. There is ultranationalism in Russia. I am not denying that. There is. Listen, I'll take it even further than that. There's a problem in Russia of literal sympathy towards freaking Stalin. Yes, there have been polls on this in Russia. 51% of Russians think that Stalin was great. Like, there is literal sympathy to Stalin. That is a problem. That is a problem. Absolutely. But America's not helping Russia. America's helping Ukraine. So it's like, well, who are we helping? Who are we supporting here? I think that is a legitimate concern to have. Same thing with Syria. Like, who are we helping over there in Syria? FSA, Free Syrian Army, where we have Islamic fundamentalists. We're helping Turkey. What's Turkey? Let's look at perfect example. America helps Turkey. Turkey is one of the biggest allies of the United States. They are the second most armed country in NATO. Who are we helping in Turkey? People who literally are deny the Armenian genocide, people who literally praise the Young Turks, people who are a country that is filled with extreme ultranationalism, a country that has a big problem with racism, especially towards Syrian immigrants. Who are we helping? What kind of people are we helping? And I know America doesn't care because America only cares about its interest. But is it really is it really beneficial to our interest that we help a country like that? Well, we have to use Turkey as a check against the Russians. Well, but that could lead to more bad than good. That could lead to more human suffering. Um, Now, if I talked about Turkey's ultranationalism problem, because believe me, make no mistake, the problem with Turkey is not just Islam. The problem with Turkey is also fanatical nationalism, and that is a huge problem over there. Now, if I were to talk about the nationalism problem in Turkey, and I bring up examples like the Grey Wolves, I would bring up examples like attacks on Syrian migrants, I would bring up examples like Turkey glorifying the people who literally orchestrated the murder of a million Armenians. Would anybody in their right mind come up to me and say, "But Ted, what about?" And they'll list some other country. Is that really an appropriate argument? Because here's the thing about whataboutisms. We can whataboutism all day. It'll literally never end. You can whataboutism all hold on. Looks like my connection went out. Internet seems to be working. Can you guys see me or hear me? I had some connection issues. Somebody sent a shout out saying because if you can see me or hear me. Okay, looks like we're good. So here's the problem with whataboutism. What you can literally whataboutism all day. It'll never end. You can it's like it'll be a vicious loop of whataboutism. We can whataboutism all day. It'll never end. What about this? What about that? What about this? But there has to come a time where we have to be accountable to what we're facing here. If somebody presents to you problems about a country, you could whataboutism and just gesture him away. But that person can equally counter whataboutism to you. Like, it'll never end. So I think it's adequate to say we need to come to certain facts and come to grips with them without shifting blame and trying to divert the attention away from the facts that are being presented. Travis McGee, you have a question? Go ahead. I'm listening. Just go ahead and type it in. I know the title says that we've shifted off into something else. Let me see. Can I change the title on this? Let me see if I can just change the title to. Can I change the title? I don't think I can change the title. Oh, well. Russia is not a Christian country. They are a nation of Caesaro-papism where the state controls the church. I don't really see a issue with that. It's not a big deal if the state and the church work together. What I will say is that the Orthodox Church is a lot better than the Vatican. I'll say that. The Russian Orthodox Church is better than the Vatican because at least the Russian Orthodox Patriarch will speak out against the LGBT. He will speak out against Sodom. Pope don't do that. The Pope comes out and says, yeah, gay people should adopt children, or gay people should have civil unions. Did he express sympathy towards gay adoption? I don't remember. As I understand, in it, the CC stance, the CC, is that the Catholic stance? Catholic Church, okay, on the death penalty isn't that it is unjust in itself, but rather that given today's adequate prison system and in light of the dignity of man, the death penalty should not be used. That is bullshit, because the Catholic Church, until recently, has had a pro-death penalty stance. I don't understand, like, the adequate prison system. What does that even mean? Like, back we've always had prisons. We've always had murderers, we've always had criminals, and we've always had punishment for those types of crimes. The Catholic Church position comes is strictly based on this idea of human dignity. Their concept of human dignity. That is literally what it is. This is what the Vatican spokes guy said. I forget his name, but he was the spokesperson for English speakers. He said it's about human dignity. It's human dignity. It's human dignity. Human dignity. I don't know what the prison system has to do with it, but the Pope has constantly stated that it's about human dignity. Well, what about human liberty? If you put people in prison, you take away their liberty. So we've just diminished human liberty by putting people in prison. I think that's just a nonsense argument. And for one thing, there's a verse, and no, I've never heard anybody quote this before. I don't know why, but there's a verse in the New Testament in one of Peter's epistles where Peter literally describes certain people as acting like animals. You could say, well, Peter, what about human dignity? Where in the Bible does it talk about this idea of, like, I mean, I know it says that in God's image did God make man, but at the same time, we have fathers of the church who talk about losing that image, and we have Saint Paul saying that, speaking of certain people being given up by God. Um, and there's one story in the Old Testament where God literally tells the prophet Jeremiah not to pray for the nation of Israel because the nation of Israel is so evil. There's a verse in the book of Proverbs where God literally laughs at his enemies as they're being punished. So I don't really understand where this idea comes from. I would argue that we take away the value of the criminal. Uh, and Blecker makes this argument that we actually take away his value when we just put him in prison all day. We say, well, we just put him in a room and give him all these perks, and that's it. Well, no. If he's fully human, then he's going to need a full punishment for what he's done because the gravity of his crimes are so tremendous. Um, so if he's fully human and he has his humanity, well, then he needs to be treated as one. And part of humanity is an acceptance of justice and also a sense of accountability. I would say that the thief on the cross, when he told Christ, "I deserve what I'm getting," when he told the other thief on the cross, "We deserve what we're getting," I believe that thief was expressing his humanity because part of being human is having accountability. Animals don't have accountability. Animals don't give a damn. A chicken will murder another chicken and think nothing of it. So that's my response. The point is that the prison system is able to keep those people from a threat to the public. But you see, it's not. But you see, if the Catholic Church is making that argument, then the Catholic Church is taking a full utilitarian position, and that's a dangerous road to take because I could apply that utilitarian position to everything else in the Catholic worldview. I don't know. I mean, is there a point of having a wedding in a church? Is there a point in even being Catholic? Like, it's nonsense because the Catholic Church has to take metaphysical positions on things, and a metaphysical position would be a retributivist position. And in retribution, there is justice, not vengeance, but there's justice, which is controlled. It's contained. Redemption of the sinner. Well, that's the job of the church. So when you want to get into the Catholic position, the job of the state is not redemption. The job of the state is to do what the state does, to impose law. The church influences the state, but at the same time, if we were to bequeath to the state the role of working to guarantee redemption, then that would just get rid of the whole separation of church and state. Now, when I say separation of church and state, I'm not speaking from an enlightenment point of view, although that can also be factored in. I'm speaking strictly from a Catholic point of view. Catholicism has a separation between church and state, in so much that we don't want the state to get involved in ecclesiastical matters. The condition of the soul is an ecclesiastical matter. It's an ecclesiastical matter. That's not the state's position. It's not the state's role. So, for example, there's a verse in the New Testament where Jesus says, if somebody offends you, then confront him about it, and if he refuses to listen, then go to the elders. And if he refuses that, then that person is a heathen. Jesus doesn't say, well, work forever, exert all your efforts to have this guy redeemed until he gets redeemed. That's not what he says. He says that if a person commits an offense, then then they confront him. If he refuses to change his ways, then go to the elders. And when the elders confront him and he continues to refuse to change his ways and to leave his errors, then he is a heathen. So if somebody is out there kidnapping people, kidnapping women, putting them in bunkers, forcing them to be sex slaves, physically torturing them every single day, raping them several times a day, and then murdering them in a horrific manner, and that person is confronted with the law, he is placed in prison for a substantial amount of time, and before his execution, he has not changed or ever even thought about changing, then I would say that person hasn't changed his ways. But even if he has found redemption, even if he has a sincere change of heart, then he should be embracing his punishment. Because the thief on the cross said, we deserve what we're getting. What did the other thief say? If you are the Son of God, then get me off this cross. And in a way, Mr. McGee, that's what you're doing. You're saying, well, because of the cross, then we shouldn't even have the death penalty. Because of the cross, we should take the thieves off the cross, because Christ was on the cross. So you're taking the Christian point of view and using it to justify abolishing the death penalty. And one thief told Christ, get me off this cross. And the other thief said, no, we deserve what we're getting. Did Christ say, you know what, thief, you're right, I should get you off this cross? No, he looked at the other thief and said, you will see me in paradise. Part of the thief's redemption was recognizing that he deserved what he was getting. There is another example of this. St. Paul is brought before the Roman court because his enemies are trying to frame him for something. And St. Paul says, if I have done anything worthy of death, then I will not protest. Even Paul said, if I've done anything worthy of death, I will not protest the death penalty. And what did the Roman council say? This man has done nothing worthy of death. End of story. So I don't see how redemption somehow gets rid of the death penalty. Oh, see, I knew you were going to do it. The woman caught in the act of adultery. You're taking an argument in a specific. See, I brought up a statement. He brings up a specific. You're taking an argument in a specific place and time that has a law in place and applying it today. How does it not fit? Tell me. Explain that to me. What do we do with Cain? Oh, so first you brought up redemption. And I explained to you why you're wrong in that position, because St. Paul himself said, if I have done anything worthy of death, I shall not protest. So apparently, let's see, the thief on the cross was wrong, I guess, what he said, we're deserving what we're getting, right? Was he wrong? Was the thief on the cross wrong? I just want that answer from you. hold on. A specific time? We still have the death penalty in our own in the United States. The state of Texas has the death penalty. So I could say, well, in the state of Texas, they have the death penalty. That's a specific place. We are in a specific time. So therefore, we can't argue. We shouldn't call for the abolition of the death penalty in Texas. Is that your position? I wish people would engage with what I'm saying and actually explain what they mean when they make these kind of specific time and place, specific whatever. Okay, explain that. The thief on the cross wasn't wrong. He was under that system. So then the death penalty isn't wrong then, because the state of Texas has the death penalty, specific place. It has that law. Then we shouldn't be calling for the abolition of the death penalty in the state of Texas. Hoorah, Travis! We're on the same side. I toast to that, brother. Let's talk about specific place and time as if that's an argument. Okay. This is the problem with arguing with people. The Catholic Church isn't saying the death penalty is wrong. That's my point. Oh, it's not saying that it's wrong. Well, let's look at what let's look at the recent change in the catechism then. Okay? Let's look at the recent change in the catechism. So, Catechism of the Church. New revision of number 2267. Let's take a look at this. The request cannot be served. What? Okay, let's click on a different website. Okay, here we go. Recourse to the death penalty on the part of legitimate authority. Following a fair trial was long considered an appropriate response to the gravity of certain crimes and an acceptable, albeit extreme, means of safeguarding the common good. Today, however, there is an increasing awareness that the dignity of the person is not lost even after the commission. So what? In addition, a new understanding has emerged of the significance of penal sanctions imposed by the state. Lastly, more effective systems of detention have been developed, which ensure the due protection of citizens. So the Catholic Church all of a sudden is taking a utilitarian standpoint and rejecting justice. So it's rejecting what God told Noah when he said, "And if man sheds blood, by man's hands shall his blood be shed." That's what it says in Genesis. I'm not referring to the Mosaic law. I'm referring to the Noahide law. And since we're all sons of Noah, this applies to all of humanity. And the reason why, what was the reason why God instituted the death penalty? He said, if a man sheds another man's hand, if a man sheds blood, by man's hands shall that man's blood be shed. That's what it says in the book of Genesis. And you can read it in the Hebrew and you can compare it to the Arabic language, because the Arabic language is the most preserved of all the Semitic languages, and you will see that that is what it says. And what is the reason why? God says, because in God's image was man made. In God's image was man made. So truly, the Catholic Church is full of shit. Because it's talking about human dignity. Well, in the Bible, it says that we should execute murderers because man was made in the image of God. And if you murder a human being, you are attacking God's image. And that is a horrific punishment. You forfeit your right to life. That's what the Bible says. So all this talk about human dignity is nonsense. In addition, a new understanding has emerged of the significance of blah, 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 blah. I already read this. Nonsense, more nonsense. Lastly, more effective systems of detention, blah, blah, blah. Consequently, the church teaches in the light of the gospel that the death penalty is inadmissible because it is an attack on the inviolability and dignity of the person, and she works with determination for its abolition worldwide. You are wrong, Mr. McGee. Either you didn't read it or maybe you're trolling me. because the Catholic Church says right here, and this is from Francis himself, that the church works with determination for its abolition worldwide. And I saw as Pope Francis was speaking to Congress, and he said that I will work in my ministry for the global abolition of the death penalty. End of story. The Catholic Church is against the death penalty. You were wrong when you said the Catholic Church isn't against the death penalty. That was wrong. And if you want to bring up human dignity, the book of Genesis cancels that out as well. It cancels that argument out. I feel like I'm Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory, etc., etc. I love that scene in the end. You lose. Good day, sir. You're a crook. Taking away the dreams and hopes of a young man. I said good day. I love that scene. Okay, the Catholic Church says that it wants to abolish the death penalty. How clear do you have to be? Yeah, it's pretty clear. Pretty clear. The Catholic Church wants to abolish the death penalty, which means the Catholic Church has set itself against the Bible. The Catholic Church has set itself up against the Bible, against all the church fathers who supported the death penalty, against the fathers of the church like Aquinas, and against Augustine, and against Bellarmine, and every holy person that has said the death penalty is good. The Catholic Church has now said it's all wrong. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. And we wonder why there's so many pedophiles in the Catholic Church, because it just waves things off all the time. Okay. I get your point, Travis. You don't have to type anymore. I already know what you're going to say. Context, time and place. What? Okay. People use this all the time. Context, time and place. Context, time and place. As if that means anything. We've always had murderers, no matter what time period you go to. We've always had murderers, no matter what place you go to. We've always had murderers, no matter what context you go to. And we've always had laws against murderers. What is your point? Okay. I'm just, okay. You weren't trolling me. Okay, that's fine. I take that back. But looking at the catechism, it is quite obvious to me that the church has changed its position on the death penalty. And the church is now saying that it wants to abolish it. Well, I understand the English language enough that when someone says they want to abolish the death penalty, they're against the death penalty. I think that's pretty obvious. I think that's pretty obvious, right? If I said I want to abolish the ban on jaywalking, I'm pretty certain I'm against the law on jaywalking. I don't think things are so much simpler. We don't have to make things complicated. Do the Methodists believe in apostolic succession? I have no idea. Okay. I'm misunderstanding you. Well, you got it all in typing here. I'm reading what you're saying. So, time and place. I think you brought up redemption. I addressed that. Addressed everything you've said. So, human dignity. I've addressed that part. I guess you just don't like my answers. I think that's really what the issue is here. Nobody just wants to admit they're wrong. That's the problem. Okay. Well, wait, what's your issue? Go ahead and type it. I'll wait. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna listen to music as you're typing, okay? Let's listen to some music, guys. Hold on. I'm trying to pick a song here. I think the output is, oh, okay, hold on. I gotta change the output on my speakers. I love this song. Such a masterpiece. Wait, this is some crazy cover version. No, no, no. To hell with that. Oh, here we go, guys. I'm listening to this as I wait for Travis to actually write to me what he's trying to say. Meanwhile, this is DJ Ted in the house giving you guys the best hits from the 90s and early 2000s. All right, Mr. Travis has written, so I'm assuming this is what you really believe in. So I'm going to respond to you, and please don't tell me that I'm misunderstanding you or that it's too difficult. This is what you've written. I played the music. I've given you time. This is what you've written. I love this song. I'm glad you do. The death penalty was instituted for a certain context. What context? Because in 1973, America abolished the death penalty in all states. So was that the end of the context? Because we brought the death penalty back in several states. So I don't know what context. Why was it put? Okay, so when God told Noah, if man sheds innocent blood, by man's hand shall his blood be shed, because man was made in the image of God. Was that for a certain context? In light of the context today, the church is saying that the death penalty should not be used. Why? So now the church can just change rules. It's not what the Bible says. The church isn't saying that the death penalty is evil. Well, the church is trying to literally abolish it. So it's against the death penalty. It's saying, in light of today's context, the death penalty should not be used. Why? Because it says so? Because it wants to defend criminals? It wants to defend serial killers? What's the point? In what context? What does that mean? What does that freaking mean? That means that the death penalty was justifiable in the past, but not today. When did it stop getting justifiable? So all those people that were executed by various governments throughout the world, that was for a certain time. So now people can go out and do mass murders and not worry about the death penalty because the Pope just with wave of a hand changed it. Is this like the Council of Jerusalem now? Like, well, we got rid of the death penalty. The Catholic Church can just wave off what it wants to wave off. So the abolition of homosexuality, that was for a certain context, but we have now recognized the human dignity of all citizens of Sodom. So therefore, homosexuality is no longer a sin, guys. We can change whatever we want. That's called anarchy. Anyway, I can't take these arguments seriously. I can't do it. DJ Ted in the house. We are playing the best hits from the 90s and early 2000s. I'm DJ Theodore. So, the Catholic Church, God have mercy. We're in a den of Pharisees. But to better the day, we have here a shiner made with real Texas strawberries in honor of Texas's resilience to maintain the death penalty. Because I guess the Catholic Church is now in defiance against the Catholic Church. Well, if the governor of Texas is a Catholic, so I guess he's not being very Catholic when he maintains the death penalty. Oh my god. Okay, guys. I'm just so tired of the bad faith. I'm just sorry. I've lost it. I've lost. You know what, Travis McGee. Thank you for having this conversation with me. In all due respect, I'm not disrespecting you. You have helped me realize why I stopped going to church. This is the reason why people if this is what the Catholic Church has become, I'm sorry. It's just I've I gotta laugh. Okay, great. I'm not being mean to you. I can't help. I am shocked that this is the argument. I am shocked that the Catholic Church can come and with just a wave of a hand say, "We're done with this and we're done with that and we're done with this," because it wants to. Because it wants to be relevant or some nonsense like that. Oh, the Croatian guy is here. I'm sorry, Mr. Croatian. We have our differences, but I'm hoping maybe you can be a voice of reason here. Pretty soon, the Catholic Church is going to come out and say, "Well, in the past, we had an abolition to gay. We had an abolition to Sodom. We were against it, and it was bad, right? But in the context of modern times, when we are trying to work for the redemption of man, and we want to uphold the dignity of every human being, including gay people, we must now accept Sodom." I mean, might as well. We might as well just do this. We might as well. We might as well just do that. Why not? It's not even close. Yes, it is actually. Yes, it is. Because when we talk about the 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 dignity of man, and because there's the dignity of man, therefore we should remove justice. We should remove imposing justice upon somebody who rapes a child and murders the child. We should remove imposing justice upon those who murder families. We should refuse to impose justice on people who cannibalize and sodomize bodies and do the most horrendous things you can think of because of the dignity of man. That's evil. That's evil. And you know what? You're absolutely wrong about what you just said because the Catholic Church is very close to doing this on homosexuality. Very close. Very close. How do I know this? How do I know this, guys? Here's why. Because the Pope literally said he's in favor for civil unions. I'm sorry, this is a highly carbonated drink. Where are my manners? I had a long day today. So, and you know what? I did this video on the Bayraktar drone. I got the Turkish horde in the comment section. I've never had this happen. I've never had a whole horde of Turkish people just come into my comment section like that. And let me tell you, I had the Turkish experience. I had the Turkish experience, everybody. They came at me with cynicism, sarcasm, mockery, Holocaust denial, and just viciousness, I must say. Now, I've never really had a strong interest in visiting Turkey. Never had a strong interest in visiting Ankara or Istanbul to see the Great Blue Mosque and eat the kebabs. But after going through the online Turkish experience, I must say that now I am 5 gazillion% certain that I really don't want to visit Turkey. You see, I was on a date with a girl last week. You know what she told me? I asked her, which country would you want to visit? If you had a choice, which country would you visit? You know what she told me? Turkey. I said, oh, you poor girl. This is not the alcohol talking, everybody, because I was this way before I started consuming this lovely beverage that was made in the state of Texas. This is just my complete expression that says, I don't give a shit anymore. Poor girl. Why would you want to visit Turkey? Why would you want to visit there for? Maybe they would accept you because you're not a Syrian migrant. I don't know. But why would you want to visit a country full of Holocaust deniers? I don't know. I don't know. If all of Germany, if most people in the German population denied the Holocaust, would you really want to go to that country? I don't know. But I had the Turkish experience, and let me tell you, it was fun. No, 100%. The Catholic Church is one step away from fully accepting Sodom. You know what? Let me look this up real quick. Hold on, my friend. Hold on. So let's go. I have nothing against you, Travis. I'm just having a conversation with you. I am having an emotional response to what you're saying. Um, I can't accept your argument. I know this is like, if I kept going with you, it would just be like a vicious circle. Okay, let's look this up, shall we? Pope Francis. Let's see here. Gay adoption. How about murder? Let's just get rid of. You know what? We had a rule against murder for many, many centuries, for millennia. We've had rules against murder. But now, we've changed things. That was for a different context. That's for a different time period, okay? I'm going to change everything just by saying it was a different context. There. You know what that's called, Travis? That's called sophistry. When you try to somehow win an argument, I'm not saying you're doing this just to win an argument, but when you're trying to prove your argument and you just want to base what you're saying on this idea of context, want to contextualize your argument, it's just, well, in what context is murder not deserving of justice? I don't know. In what context is a man who breaks into a house, rapes the daughter, and ties the two children to a mattress and light them on fire? In what context is a perpetrator who does something like that not worthy of justice? In what context? I already know what you're going to say. I never said they're not deserving of punishment. I'm saying that they should be put in prison. Okay. Well, what about the value of human liberty? I know exactly what you're going to say. You're going to say they should be put in prison forever. Put in prison. Why? So they can just live their lives in a room and have recreation time and get 3 meals a day and the state pays for their breakfast? Is that what you want? Okay. Okay. I mean, if that's your idea of justice, we live in two different worlds, and I'm never going to convince you otherwise. Why cry over Moscow murderers? I'm not Moscow murderers. Hmm. I never. Okay. Some 19-year-old kid who's forced into the military and just walking around and he dies. I feel bad for that kid because he was forced into that position. Now, a good Ukrainian patriot who kidnaps ethnic Russians and keeps them in the basement where he and his gang and his little patriot friends rape them every single day and torture them. Yeah, I don't support those people. And I know you're going to bring up Russia because we're going to whataboutism all day. Because that's what happens in every single discussion. Everybody wants to choose extremes. The Wagner group, the group that consists of Russian fascists, they kidnapped a poor Syrian man and tortured him to death. And they got it all on film while they were listening to some turbo folk music. That was horrendous. But I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about some 19-year-old Russian guy, never seen combat, scared to death, and just gets blasted. And he dies. I have a human response to that. Just as I would feel sorry for Ukrainian soldiers who get blasted as well, or Ukrainian civilians who get killed in shell fire. I don't laugh at their deaths. Okay. Well, you know what? American soldiers were invading Iraq. Should I not feel sorry for American soldiers when they were blown up by IEDs, or should I just say, well, they're the invaders, so I don't really care? Or is there a limit to what you're saying? I don't know. The Hebrews invaded Canaan. I guess they were all evil too, right? Invasions are all evil. To replace the death penalty, those criminals will be placed on a deserted island and only eat pickles for the rest of their life. Why? No, why pickles? Pickles have flavor. Should be no flavor. Well, it's Russia's fault while they're there. But if you're forced into the military and you're stuck in Ukraine and you're terrified and you get blasted, I'm going to feel sorry for you. Like, plain and simple. I'm going to feel sorry for you. I guess that's evil on my part. I don't know. all the negatives on the Turks. Keep in mind there's a law which can imprison you if you say anything critical about the founder of the Republic of Turkey or genocide. It's an ambiguous law too, especially under Erdogan. You are correct that there is a law against talking about the Armenian genocide, but it is also true that a lot of Turks sincerely deny the Armenian genocide. They are Turks who talk about the Armenian genocide. They're ostracized, and there are Turkish historians who've talked about the Armenian genocide. They're also ostracized. And my sympathies go to those people, but it doesn't change the fact that when you talk about Turkey and you have an entire horde of people from Turkey on your Facebook page or YouTube channel telling you that you're an idiot because you bring up the Armenian genocide, kind of tells me something. There's a lot of tankies out there who will actually cheer on the death of US. Yes, I know. I know. It's disgusting. It's not right. It is not right. Some soldier out of high school in the backwoods of Texas who's like, I want to be a patriot, and he goes and joins the military, and now he's in Iraq and he gets blown up by an IED, and his family back in Texas or the Midwest or whatever has to hear about that. My sympathies go to those people. The American soldiers who were stationed in Lebanon and they were slaughtered by a suicide bomber, some maniac suicide bomber who literally rammed his van into the Marine barracks with a giant grin on his face and blew himself up, and 200 Marines died. And when they were searching the debris, what was left of the barracks, and they found a letter from some guy's mother, yeah, I have a human response to that. Don't tell me I can't have a human response to that. You can't tell me how to feel. I feel you may not feel sorry for those people. I do. Some guy got his letter from his mom and he's in Lebanon. Hi, mom. Boom. And then you have to call the mother up and say, "Oh, hey, your son died." But don't worry, your son was asking for it because he was in someone else's country. What? What? Yeah. I would like for these people to, I know what, if I had to pick a job for these people who make these arguments, I'd give you a job. You got to call up all the parents of those who died in the war. You got to call up all the Russian parents, all the Russian mothers, and you got to tell them, "Hey, your son's dead. Poor little Alexander, poor little Dmitry and Andre. Yeah, they're dead. But don't worry, they were asking for it." Would you tell that to a mother? I don't think so. Would you apply? Here we go with the whataboutism stuff. Would you apply the same standard to those falsely sentenced to death penalty? Yes. Falsely sentenced, yes. People who do horrendous murders, no. But falsely sentenced, yeah, if they're still alive. I mean, I think the last people that we killed allegedly wrongly were like their families are probably dead. I don't know. Their immediate families are probably dead because that was a long time ago. Would you apply the same standard? Yes, absolutely. If you were falsely accused and you were stuck in death row, in fact, there are many cases of people in the United States who were in death row and they have been recently released because it's been proven that they were innocent. And those people I feel sorry for. Yes, absolutely. Oh, paramilitary groups. What about paramilitary groups? Which paramilitaries? Lebanese paramilitaries or Ukrainian? Too many woke Westerners are fighting in Ukraine. Some fool put a photo where he was staying in Ukraine and the Russians bombed it. Interesting. Any paramilitary group. I mean, what are you talking about? Are you talking about, paramilitaries who die? I mean, it would depend. It would depend on the paramilitary group. If it's Azov, I don't give a shit about those guys. But if it's like some poor Ukrainian guy who's defending his village, I feel bad for those people. Yes. I did a video about this. I don't know why, like, apparently no one watched it. I did a video saying I feel bad for the Ukrainians. I know a guy who lives in Ukraine. I mean, I can't say he's my friend. I've never really met him, but we've had some good conversations together. He's a cool guy, very nice guy. He's Ukrainian, and he's a Ukrainian patriot. I don't know if he's not a Banderist, but he is a patriot, and he's in Odessa, and he is he's in one of the major cities of Ukraine, which the Russians want. And I talked to him sometimes, and he was a private trainer. I'm not sure if he was running a gym. I know he was a private trainer. He was doing some work with that, making a living doing that. And now he can't do his job anymore because everything's closed, and he has to live with the prospect of being shelled. And I feel bad for the guy. I don't know. Everybody wants you to take an extreme. You know, if I say like I feel bad for these people, well, what about the other? Well, you must like worship Putin. You must no. I feel bad for people. Like I do. They're not there because they wanted to be there. Like they're forced into the position. They're yeah. It's the only group willing to actually do something. If it's the only group willing to do something, you talking about Azov is the only group? Hmm. Hmm. Well, there is a lot of praise for Azov in Ukraine, and that is a problem. Anyway, I actually recently started reading a book. I forget the name. I just started reading it today. Where is it? Let me see if I can get it here. It's called Through Times of Trouble. It's about the situation in Donbass. It's by this Russian lady, Anna Matvieva, and she talks about how certain ideologies can become very popular overnight. Certain ideologies that were considered cringe or not cringe, they were considered fringe, could actually spark in huge popularity overnight because of a violent or intense situation like getting invaded. One of the issues I have with the Russian invasion is that it will radicalize people and it will get people to become more favorable towards groups like Azov or other crazy ultranationalist groups. In fact, I was following the Azov Battalion's um, Telegram page, and their Telegram page, when I started following them, had over 30,000 followers. And overnight, they went up to 135,000 followers. So that's substantial. That's substantial. And when America invaded Iraq, it sparked radicalization. That's what it did. It sparked radicalization. And I think the same type of effect will be manifested in Ukraine because of this war. And this book, in the beginning, it talks about the psychology of ideological trends and how they go from being fringe to popular overnight. So, for example, the idea of Scottish independence in the 1990s was considered fringe. In 2014, 50% of people in Scotland supported independence from the United Kingdom. Catalonian separatism was considered fringe until the 2010 economic crisis in Europe. Um, Nationalism in Germany was considered fringe until the refugee crisis of 2015. And it continued on into 2016, 2017. Um, in Sweden, the nationalists were considered fringe. Now the Sweden Democrats are the third largest party. You can go to Latvia, and the far right populists are, I think, the third or fourth largest political faction in that country. Um, in the Netherlands, believe it or not, a very, very recently formed political party called the Forum for Democracy Party became the number one party for regional elections in 2019. So people can change overnight. For a long time, there was a lot of resistance towards increasing the military budget in Germany. After Russia invaded Ukraine, now Germany is one of the biggest military spenders in the world. So people can change very quickly. Societies can change very quickly. And ideologies that were once considered irrelevant or once considered harmless or on the margins or fringe can overnight or in a very rapid amount of time become very popular thanks to an extreme situation. And you can go back to the first half of the 20th century to see this. So, for example, Ukrainian ultranationalism was not really that popular in the 1920s, 1930s. It wasn't super popular, but it gained much popularity because of the Soviet invasion, and also when Germany uh, took control of Poland. That sparked a lot of nationalist sentiments. And the book also makes an interesting observation that in every political or ethnic or ideological conflict, you always have three different zones. You have you have one zone that is controlled by, well, not necessarily three, but you will have two different types of spaces, right? You have the space that's controlled uh, one faction, a space that's controlled by the other. But then you have the other type of space that consists of both members of the political movement or the religious movement or the ethnic group living together. And that is where the blood is shed. So 1940s, you had tension between Poles and Ukrainians. But where was the violence done? The violence was done where Poles and Ukrainians lived together in East Galicia, in the Chelm, in Lvov, in Volhynia. That's where much of the killing was done. You can make the same observation about the Lebanese civil war. You can make the same observation probably about any civil war. You always have the area where that just consists of one or the other faction, and then you have the space where both factions are living amongst themselves, or they're living very close to each other. Northern Ireland has a similar thing. You have the, what is it, the loyalists, and then you have those who want to be a part of Ireland. And if let's say violence broke out in Ireland, where's most of the violence going to take place? It's going to take place in those areas where Protestants and Catholics live close by. So, and she makes a similar observation in regards to Donbass. Where was a lot of the fighting in Ukraine? It was in Donbass. Why? Where it's where you have a lot of ethnic Russians living there. You have Ukrainians living there. You have people who hate the government and they want to be under Russia, or they want to make their own independent state that's loyal to Russia, basically a Russian satellite. And then you have, the government forces. But then, of course, you also have militia groups that come from either that area or they come from other parts of eastern Ukraine. It's just it's interesting. You could say it's a complicated situation. And in a way, it is complicated, but nonetheless, it's interesting. Um, Belt and Road is actually a good thing. Okay, here we go with the Belt and Road stuff. Would you agree that Banderists were an extent motivated by Russian genocide of Ukrainians? Yes. Yes. That, see how easy it is for me to answer questions? It's so easy. I wish people can answer questions that simply. Yes. As I said just now, the Soviet invasion is what gave propaganda fodder to these people. And this is what this book talks about, at least in the section that I'm reading now, how stressful, violent, and dramatic situations can accelerate a radical group from being fringe to being mainstream. So that's my position on that. What else is new, guys? DJ Ted's in the house. The Little Green Men, yes, they were basically like Russian operatives in Crimea, and or pro-Russian operatives, and they were in Crimea, basically taking over government buildings in 2014 before the Russian annexation of that region. Chile is part of the Belt and Road, better for China to export cheap electronics. See, Heather always talks about three things. It's the Belt and Road Initiative, Mick something, what's his name? O'Connor, her billy goats, which I don't mind. I enjoy hearing about that. Um, or how the people are innocent and it's just the big elites who are the bad guys. That's the four things. My mistake. I said three. I meant four. Four things. So, um, the Middle East scares me. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, man. Those are my people. Would you agree? Okay, I already read that. I remember I had a Muslim girl exchange my dollars in yuan to get a better rate. We need more. Yeah, we need a. I think we need a more female presence. Too many males. Too much testosterone. You know who their MO seems to indicate what they were. In fact, the Wagner Group. Oh, interesting. That's possible. I mean, I don't. People think people think that they're gonna corner me. Like, Russia did. Like, okay, that's messed up. Russia did this, but that's messed up too. The Holodomor, that shit's messed up. Starving people to death by the millions. Yeah, that's messed up. Causing a huge population decline in Ukraine to the point where they had to export labor from Russia to Ukraine. Yeah, that's messed up. The Soviet Union, evil. Absolutely. People are like, what about this? Like, that's messed up. What about executing innocent people? I don't believe in that. I believe in executing guilty people, people who act punishing guilty people who we know for a fact did it. Yeah, I know, right? If I do this debate that somebody wants to, or some guy's gonna be like, "Are you 100%?" Yes, yes. There are cases where we 100% know that people, in which people actually did wrong, and we knew that they did it. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I guess you shouldn't imprison anybody because there's a slight chance they may be innocent. It would be really funny. I just thought about this. If they say if they say life in prison is punishment enough, right? Or they'll say it's just as bad as death, or they'll say it's worse, right? I've heard both. I've heard people say it's just as bad as death, and I've heard people say it's worse, right? Either way, it doesn't matter. And then I say, and then they'll say, well, you may actually kill innocent people, right? Then I'll say, well, you could imprison innocent people as well. Then they'll say, but it's better than death. Ah, I thought you said it was worse or that it was the same. So which one is it? Oh man, I gotta write that one down. I gotta write that one down. That's a good one. So I guess death is worse then. So I guess it is a much worse punishment than life, and life isn't as bad as death. Who would have known? Oh God. You should have seen me when I was in junior high. Oh God, I was very argumentative. I was very argumentative. I was extremely argumentative when I was in junior high and high school too. But not for like I was never argumentative for the sake of being argumentative. I never did that. I was like, oh, I'm gonna just troll. I always argued for things that I truly believed in. I sentence you to life in California. Oh God, no, please, that's worse. Could you sentence me to life in Zagreb? Is that possible? Can I want to appeal my sentence and I demand a change in the place of imprisonment or the yeah. Could you send me to life in Zagreb? Is that possible? US needs to learn a little from the Chinese capitalists. I think you were too smart for your I mean, I wouldn't say I was too smart, but I'm not teaching you really tactics. I'm just teaching you. You see, when I used to debate people, I used to just look at what they were saying, and that's trying to analyze what they're. I still do that. Oh, Macedonia 100. Oh, Macedonia or Detroit? Macedonia 100% over Detroit any day. Detroit is that's Uganda. I ain't going to Detroit. Hell with that. I'll go to Skopje and I'll listen to Macedonian folk music and eat chivapi. I'm not going to. No. Detroit sucks. That's a real shithole. I would legit be scared in Detroit. Legit. I've never seen Macedonia. Oh no. I've seen the YouTube videos of Macedonia. It seems like a cool place. But every time I go to the Macedonian YouTube video, there's always an argument that breaks out that Macedonia is part of Greece or whatever. Um, I guess I would be cool in Macedonia, but if I really wanted to like kill myself, I would say Alexander the Great's Greek. Oh no, Chavapi. Only Albania. I may get killed in Macedonia. They'll probably think I'm Albanian or something. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. Oh yeah, I used to look at people's like what they were like the content of their arguments. Now, because I notice everyone's so manipulative nowadays. People are so like super manipulative, and I just look at how people argue. That's what I focus on more than anything. I just focus on that. I'm like, wait, why are you changing the subject? And I think when you do that, it's easier to debate people because then you can see the little tactics that they're doing, their little manipulative tactics, and then they'll say like, because then they'll change the subject because you'll get them on something like they'll present to you an argument, and then you say, okay, you'll give them their response, and and they don't like the response, so they change the subject, right? And then you say, well, wait, why are you changing the subject? What's the point? Why? Or they'll try to contextualize everything, and they'll say, but that was a different context. And I'll just say, well, what do you mean? What do you mean context? Well, explain yourself. Elaborate more on that, because they need to elaborate more on that. Because that's if you're going to sit there and say, well, context, and then expect me to actually respond to that as if I know what you're talking about, you're dead wrong. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean context? Explain to me why that's an argument. Explain to me why that applies to this discussion. Explain to me why that disproves me wrong. Explain to me why that proves you right. Nobody wants to do that though. Everybody wants to try to confuse you and smoke screen and fog up your brain with with deflections and diversions. Let me deflect. Let me divert the discussion. Let me widen the goalpost, as they say. Well, what about the context? And if you don't like, I remember when people first started doing that to me, I would get like stumped. I would think, wait, what? Because there's nothing to say to that. That's why your brain gets stumped when you hear that. There's nothing to say to that because it's not an argument. Context. Okay, what do you mean? Explain. What's the context? In what context is killing? In what context is capital punishment being imposed on serial killers wrong? Like, where does that apply? Explain. Elaborate. I don't get it. I don't follow, as they say. I don't follow. Oh, second baby. Are you getting milk from those goats? By the way. But if I do this debate, somebody said they want to set up a debate. If this actually happens, that's exactly what I'm expecting: is diversions, deflections, whataboutisms, false equivalencies. What else is there? You know, and if that all fails, just resort to plain insults. This has been an interesting conversation. I expected it to go down this way because I said I'm going to talk about the death penalty. Oh God, I know I'm going to get these people who are going to disagree with me on stuff. For legal reasons, was that a joke? Was what a joke? I might as well introduce you to my family members if you were headed for my city. I'll remember that if I ever go to Skopje. You started a hydroponics greenhouse. That's awesome. How big is it? We only have one female, not enough to get complete milk, and it needs to go to the baby. So it's not really a milk goat. It's a meat goat, I would guess. Because there's goats that are bred for milk, and the milk is excellent. But the goats who aren't bred for milk aren't going to really produce a lot of milk. But milk goats will produce. I've heard of milk goats giving you like a gallon of milk a day. Each goat will give you a gallon of milk, and then you have the Nigerian goats, which will give you about a quart of milk a day, which is still pretty good. Goat milk is a luxury. It's really good quality milk. Turkey tried to take over Incirlink Air Base in 2016. Yeah, I remember that. Where they have nuclear weapons, Germany will get nuclear weapons after Ukraine. Yep, yeah. I think it's inevitable that Germany will go nuclear. Some context would have made the sentence way less creepy. I don't know what you're talking about. About Macedonia? I don't know what you're talking about. I noticed that when you argue with people and you say, "Okay, this is why you're wrong. This is why I think you're mistaken. Here's the Bible verses. They say context. That's how they want to. That's how they try to win the argument. Context. Context. Conservatives were playing this game when Milo was promoting pederasty. He was saying, "Oh yeah, boys who get raped, they can benefit from that somehow." He actually said this, and when I was exposing him, I remember there were people saying, "What context, though? In what context was he saying it? Well, in what context is that ever appropriate? I don't know what world you live in. The whole one female, not enough milk. Oh, okay. I mean, we're obviously, it goes without saying, we're talking about cattle animals here. All I get is Constantine mixed paganism. Who even do people still believe that? That's like an old ass belief. That's from like Chick tracks. For those of you who don't know, back in the 90s, there was this phenomena of the Chick track. I think they still produce them, but some crazy guy named Jack Chick. That's actually his name, Jack Chick. He used to make these Christian comic books, and in the comic books, he would like illustrate his own weird delusional fictional history, and he would have Constantine there, and Constantine creating the Catholic Church, and it's just like crazy shit. But people would read those comics, and they would actually believe them. They would. They would believe them as if they were historical truth. Chick tracks, they have them in Croatia. Oh god, I feel sorry for you guys. America spreads its poison throughout the whole world. That's what's so messed up about it. America just spreads its poison all over the world. Chick tracks were in every urinal in men's bath. Oh, I know. They were all over the damn place. Everybody had chick tracks. Kids would go trick or treating. They got chick tracks, and it's just it was an awful. Oh, you don't have them? Oh, I envy you guys. I envy you guys. Oh yeah, Jack Chick. Oh yes. Such nonsense. Nigerian dwarf? Yeah, that is a milk goat. So she should give you about a quart of milk a day. America spreads its nonsense all throughout the world. It spreads its wacky religion. You see people in Southeast Asia who are like, "Don't die, don't die, don't die, don't die." Pastor Mike from Alabama. He's so cool. He's so great. I remember I was in Spain. I couldn't believe it. I was in Spain and I saw like four guys. It was three guys. It was late at night. It was like 10 o'clock, maybe like, I don't know, 10:30 at night or something. I was outside and I see three dudes staring into the sky. Three dudes just staring into the sky. And I looked at them for a moment. I'm like, what are they looking at? And they weren't lowering their heads. They were just staring at the sky. So I walked up to them and I said, "What are you guys looking at?" And literally one of them looked at me and said, "Oh, we're looking for the blood moon." These are Spaniards. The blood moon. Yeah, we're looking for the blood moon. Pastor Hagee teaches this. Pastor Hagee teaches this. Pastor Hagee. And I thought, my God, why is America spreading its retardation all over the world? Why? 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 It's so sad. It's so sad. Good night. Good night, Juan. I had goat milks as it tasted like a stinky goat. It was in Norway. I'd like to try it again, but I don't know what type. I've heard Nigerian dwarfs are good, which you need a male and a female. But yeah, you have these people who are like, "Donta pasta, pasta." And I was in Spain. I saw this nonsense. I met this one lady, and she said, "Oh, pastor back in Alabama. He come over here. He's so cool. Pastor back in Alabama." Alabama, he come over here. He came from Tennessee, pastor from Tennessee, come over here. And I'm just like, what? Yes, let's see the crazy Croat prot lady. What are you talking about? Yeah, pastor from Alabama. Like, this is Spain. You have these giant cathedrals everywhere. You have this super rich Christian history. And you want to listen to some guy from Tennessee? It's insane. It's insane. You know, people outside of America had pasta before you. People outside of America had pasta. Well, that's obvious. Pasta's been here for thousands of years. YouTube account Iswav Rotnik is the crazy lady. Oh, okay. Let's check this out. I can't do. I'm thinking honestly about just getting rid of StreamYard. I think I should just get rid of it because I have to. One thing, I have to pay money every month for it. It's not that much. It's like 20. I think, what is it? It's like $20 a month or something. But I mean, the only reason why I use it is to schedule my. I use it to schedule my live streams, but I'm thinking I should just get rid of it because it doesn't really like. I get about the same amount of views as I would just using regular YouTube Live. And plus, I can copy and paste anything you guys write to me on YouTube. Yeah. Pastor Billy Bob. Oh, you see this in the Philippines. Pastor Billy Bob come to the Philippines. He tell us about the gospel. Oh no, I'm just looking up Iswav Rotnik. This woman is crazy. You weren't kidding. She looks insane. Imam jednu dobru jednu Isu vizje. Sounds like Portuguese. U vezi donacija progresno I pravno davlovo I buzje. I'm trying to do the Bosnian thing. Let me guess. Putin's invasion is part of Bible prophecy, right? Putin is the Antichrist, I guess. Pastor Billy Bob come over here from Alabama. He come tell us the gospel. Meanwhile, they got like ancient cathedrals everywhere. They have this rich history of Christianity, and people want to like, I don't know. It's so sickening. The whole thing is, and then this Catholic Church stuff. I mean, my God, man. Everyone's the Antichrist. Yeah, I believe that. I believe you. You know, yeah, that's how a lot of these people are. What was the advantage? The advantage of StreamYard is that I can schedule my live streams, and then if somebody wants to come on, I can invite them. The problem with that is that if I bring somebody on, I put a link on the chat, and you got a bunch of other people clicking on it, and they all want to come on, and it's like, oh, no. I really see. I debate people. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy debate. I would much rather just talk to you guys and listen to music and whatever. I don't like debating people. Here's the reason why I cannot stand debating people. Here's the reason why. Is if I give somebody something that is so obvious and they try to like split hairs, I can't tolerate those people because it's just a waste of time. You know, there's an old Croatian saying, and I know maybe Chopo, you've heard this before. I heard this from remember Mirko Krokop? He was a kickboxer from Croatia. They used to call him, what was it? They used to say, what was it? Right foot hospital, left foot funeral or something like that. Funeral house. He was this beer, it tastes like kind of like cherry, actually. It doesn't really have a strawberry taste to it. It's a good flavor. You know, Mirko Krokop was the guy who inspired me to get into martial arts. He was the guy who really, I got into martial arts before I heard about him, but then I started looking at him, and he really inspired me to train. And I loved watching him, and I would try to emulate him a little bit. I was a big head kicker. I used to kick people in the face. It was that was what I did to win, and I don't want to say anymore because people think you're showing off, but that's I did that for a couple of years. But Mirko Krokop, he did this interview many years ago, and he said If you argue with a fool, literally no one can tell the difference between you and the fool. It's just a fact. Like, if you argue with a fool, nobody can tell. That's a ubiquitous thing? Okay. He said, if you argue with a fool, nobody can tell the difference. It's true. Nobody can tell the difference. Like, when I argued with that guy, Matthew or whatever, and I was sitting there just, like, going on the loop with him, and I was giving him my arguments, like, no matter what I would say, he would just tell me the same damn thing, and we were just going on this vicious loop. I honestly God, I should have ended it. I'm being real with you guys. I should have ended it. I should have ended it. I should have just ended it and been like, "You know what? This is a waste of time. Goodbye. This is bullshit. This is not even good faith." I had him come on one more time. I was charitable with him, and I gave him my last argument. I said, and I gave him the most obvious. I gave him the most obvious proof that the death penalty isn't unbiblical. When Paul says, "If I've done anything worthy of death, then I won't protest." It's so obvious. Paul's saying if there are things that are worthy of death, and if we've done them, we shouldn't protest. We should take accountability. And he just goes around it. He tries to find a way to split hairs, and it's just like it's a waste of time. It's exhausting. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. I think that if you debate somebody and you give them something that's so obvious and they want to split hairs over it, that's bad faith. And you can simply say, listen, we live in two different worlds. I'm obviously not going to convince you of anything. We live in two different, like this guy who's trying to say, well, the Catholic Church doesn't say the death penalty is wrong, but it's literally saying it wants to abolish it. I mean, it's obvious saying that it's wrong. It wants to get rid of it. If it doesn't think it's wrong, why would it want to get rid of it for? That's like some crazy woman who hears for the first time that, oh, cookies are bad for you. Don't give children cookies. Don't allow children to drink soda because they're gonna be bad for you. Some quack doctor tells them it's bad for them. Don't let them do that. So the mom, and I've seen this numerous times. It drives me crazy. You'll see these mothers come around and they're like, "Hey, children, you're gonna eat carrot sticks and celery all day." And then no cookies, no chips, no soda. And the kids are living in a flipping shoebox, and they can't drink, they can't do this, they can't do that, they can't do this, they can't eat this. And then what happens? That kid goes to a friend's house. What's he doing? He's drinking the soda. Why? Because mom don't let him drink it. Instead of just allowing the kid to drink soda, allowing the kid to eat chips, allowing the kid to do whatever the hell to eat what he wants, and then coming to the realization that maybe I shouldn't overdo it on the soda. That way he gets it out of his system. Instead of that, they go crazy and they become little totalitarians over what their kids eat. I just diverted. Why did I bring that example up? It's like if a mother comes over and says, "No cookies, no soda, no this." Well, I'm not against soda consumption. You apparently are. People just want to sit there and act like sophists. That's sophistry. Well, that's not. I don't. Sophistry is when you take something so obvious and you try to manipulate a person's perception of it. You try to manipulate a person's perception of reality. That could be a form of sophistry when you do something like that. I got people spam my stuff with like porn or something. What the hell? I'm going to report this. Unwanted commercial content, pornography. Yes, reported. Go away. Thank you. So when you give the sophist something obvious, like, okay, here's Paul saying that like there are things worthy of death, and if we've done them, we shouldn't protest. He's saying this. This is what he's saying. Or the thief on the cross who says we're deserving what we're getting, but you're still wrong, Ted, because or something like that. It's like, okay, who cares? Obviously, I can't get through you. It's like if somebody says, the sky is green. Oh, no, it's not. Oh yeah, it's green. No, it's blue. Actually, no, it's green, because the reason why it looks blue to you is because there's some gases up in the air that make it look blue, but it's really green. Okay, have a nice day. Goodbye. I don't want to waste my time with you. And you know what? It's more difficult to walk away from an argument than to actually stick to the argument. That's another thing. There's an old Arab proverb. We talked about a Yugoslav proverb. I'll give you a little Middle Eastern proverb. There's a Middle Eastern proverb that says, it is harder to walk away than to stay in a fight. And that's true, because your ego drives you. And that can be helpful, but it can be destructive at the same time. But that's why I don't like debating people, because you give some, like, I remember years ago I debated this Indian guy. This was back in 2011. This is ancient times, 2011, guys. And it was this Indian atheist who was a homosexual, and he called himself the gay Gandhi. I don't know if he's still around, but that's what he said, I'm the gay Gandhi. That's what this guy called himself. And in those days, 2011, it was so much easier to argue with people. It was so much easier. Today, people are much more vicious in how they debate, especially with Twitch, Twitch streaming and YouTube Live and all that. But there was this guy, and we were arguing about gay marriage, and I said, okay, should we allow polygamy? And he's like, well, I mean, the context is different. It's like, just answer the question, dude. Just say, yeah, you're in favor for polygamy. I learn something new every time you debate. Thank you. I don't have your patience, though. Oh, I'm glad you can see that. Hopefully soon some of the deeds of truth you've shown will grow. I appreciate that, Susan. Thank you for your words of encouragement. Yeah, this is the problem with arguing with people. Like, you tell people, okay, this is why you're wrong. Here's the truth. Here's the fact. Oh no. And it's not as though they're giving you another piece of information that you may have missed. Like, okay, well, that's true, but here's the other part of the story that you're missing. Or yeah, that's true, but like people don't want to do that. They just want to say, they want to split hairs with you on everything. Like, there was this Turkish guy who started debating me, and he's like, Bayraktar TB2 was not a Turkey's first indigenous drone. Okay, it was Turkey's first indigenously made armed drone. Oh no, actually that's not true. The first Turkish indigenously made armed drone was like the TAIN or something like that. And I looked into it, and that damn thing didn't really go into operation until, like, what was it, 2018 or something. And the Bayraktar was flown in 2014. So I was like, well, no, Bayraktar was flown in 2014. This thing did its first operation in like 2018 or something like that. And this guy never responded to me. It's like, turn 28 tomorrow. Not sure what to feel about it. There's nothing to feel about it. It is what it is. Only present that I care about is the Shinedown concert. Mom and I are going in early May. He had to pass on Roland's spoken word. Rarely ask for much. Oh, sorry to hear that. Roland's, I wasn't a big fan of his music. The only song that I enjoyed from him was a song that he made. It was called Illumination. I thought that was a decent rock, like a heavy rock song. Other than that, I think Henry Rollins can be a very vicious person, and that's my issue with him, is that he's vicious against people, especially against people who oppose gay marriage. And I noticed that about him, because I've known about Rollins for a long time. First heard about him when I was in junior high, because he popped up in the Fight for New York video game. That's when I first heard about him. And then I looked him up, and I found out he was a singer and all this stuff. And then years ago, tried to listen to some of his music, didn't really like it. But then I found Illumination. It's a decent rock song. Fun fact, Bayraktar is a Turkish word for flag bearer. It made its way into Croatian as Baryaktar. This means that the creator's name is literally Seljuk flag bearer. Interesting. That is interesting. I did not know that. Thank you. And that's why you said, may God allow the flag bearer to defeat Russia or something. Okay, now I get what you meant by that. Okay. Interesting. But the reason why, you see, I don't like doing debates. I don't. I think they're exhausting. And I also think they are a huge drain for my time. Because when you do a debate, you have to prepare, and that takes a lot of time to prepare. You have to study, you have to make sure you got your information right, and you have to also visualize in your head all the arguments that they're going to bring up, or imagine all the arguments, because you know what arguments they're going to bring up. So you have to look at the opposing arguments. You have to look at what type of information they're going to bring, to the best of your ability, and then you have to be ready for all of that. And that takes a lot of time, and time that I could be using to write articles or research stuff that I'm actually interested in. The good thing about debates, and this is the reason why I do them, is because while they are a huge drain on my time, I actually increase in knowledge with every debate that I do. Because in every debate that I do, so for example, if I know I'm going to debate somebody, I'm going to prepare hardcore for it, and I will even lose sleep preparing for a debate. Um, and I learned a lot, right? You learn a lot in that phase of preparation. Then you take what you learn and you argue your position with the information that you've learned under pressure. Because when you're debating somebody, it's nothing like just having a conversation with a friend who you agree with. If you can have a conversation with a friend and you're both agreeing and you're like, "Yeah, what about this and what about that?" And you could learn something in those conversations, but it's not under pressure. When you argue your point under pressure, it's the same type of effect that a sparring match has. Before you spar in a martial arts gym, you drill, you learn moves, you learn different strikes, and then you drill those strikes on a heavy bag, on mitts, in shadow boxing. And then once you've done enough repetitions of those drills, once you have done enough bag work, you got your conditioning right, then you start sparring. And in sparring, when you first spar and you've never done it before, you're more than likely going to forget everything that you've drilled. Now, you're going to try to do them, but your flight or fight or freeze instinct is going to kick in and you're going to get your ass kicked. But you do that again and you do that again and you do that again. And with enough time and patience and perseverance, you will literally, and I've actually had this happen to me several times in sparring. Um, Time actually feels slow once you've done enough sparring. Like you can actually, time is our time is not relative unto its in itself, but our experience of time, I think, is like how we feel time. Because it's for some people, time feels faster than others. And when you've done enough sparring, you will. When you first start sparring, time is super fast. It's like everything's happening fast. But when you do enough drills, you do enough bag work, you do enough sparring. When you spar under that pressure, time feels slower and you begin to actually see opportunities to use the moves that you've drilled. It's the same thing with debate. You learn and learn and learn and learn, and then you spar, you debate. And when you debate your points, you remember them because it's done under pressure. It's like a fossil. An animal that just dies and rots in the earth, that's it, it's gone. But an animal that is killed under an immense amount of pressure becomes fossilized and it's remembered. I just thought of that. I just thought of that analogy. So it's the same thing with doing things under pressure. Anytime you do things under pressure, you're going to be better at doing that thing, be it fighting, be it arguing, be it anything. Under pressure is where you truly build your skill and where you truly remember things and remember arguments. For some reason, when we do things under pressure, we tend to remember those things more. Um, and it's just a fact. Um, so that's one of the reasons why I do debates. It helps me learn. It increases my awareness and knowledge. It helps me remember arguments better. The third reason why I do it is because I don't want to be an echo chamber. As much as it as relaxing as it is to just talk and have a good time with you guys, when you do things under pressure and you're dealing with an opposing view, you're not an echo chamber. You're bringing in opposition, you're dealing with the opposition, and then you're placing your views against that opposition. And that helps you. It helps the people who are listening to you because they can see that you're not an echo chamber, and they can hear the opposing view, and then they can hear your response to it, and it sort of helps everybody actually, except it usually doesn't help the person you're arguing against because they don't want to admit they're wrong. Um, so yeah, that's my thoughts. I learned something. Okay, I already read that. Turn. Okay. Fun fact. Okay, I already read that. Hi, what does your dad think about the rapture? I think my father is. I don't know. My father is definitely not pre-trib. Uh, My dad really leaned on post-trib. Thoughts on Purim? I don't know what's Purim. I don't know what is that. Purim? It's a Jewish holiday, I think, right? I have no idea what it is. I have no idea what it consists of. Yeah. Any other interesting questions or what? I don't know. I think I'm done here. How long have I been talking? I've been here for a long time. Oh my gosh, 2 hours and a half. Okay, guys, I think I'm done here. If you guys have anything, I'll stay for another few minutes, okay, in case somebody else has something else to say. The man has been through so much and still on his journey. He used to be absolute sick. Okay. All right, man. I wish him luck. I'm just saying the way he acts, he could change, but the way he acts. MLF Lullaby? What is that? He said that cynicism is intellectual cowardice because one hasn't taken their time to deal with what it is. Okay. Okay. I'm just saying he may change, but he can be very vicious against people who oppose gay marriage. One DJ request. Okay, go ahead. Would you ever debate Jesse Lee Peterson? I've debated Jesse Lee Peterson. In fact, I have it on my computer. I want to re-upload it on my YouTube channel. But I would debate him again. Yeah, no problem. I think he has very bad faith tactics. I don't like how he argues. He will do something like, all right, good night, Robbie. He will do things like say, why haven't you forgiven your father? And you're like, what? And then he'll say, do you have anger? Yeah. How can the Son of God have anger? Because I'm human, but people who are the sons of God don't have anger. Or the worst and most manipulative tactic that he does is he says, do you sin? Yeah. How can a child of God sin? Well, we've all fall short, St. John says, whoever says he doesn't sin is a liar. I haven't sinned. Oh, really, Jesse? Nope, I haven't sinned at all. I'm pure. And a lot of people believe him, and they think he's, it's basically he becomes like a cult leader. Yep, exactly why the military does it. Have a good night, Travis. You should debate David Duke. I mean, okay, he knows where to find. I don't know what we debate. What would we debate about? I mean, what eugenics? What are we gonna? Are we gonna debate about the Jews? Like, what are we gonna debate about? Anyway, I'll see you guys later. I'm done. Oh yeah, you had a music request? MLF Lullaby by Leher. This better not be trolling. Tom Leher. Oh, I think I've seen this before. I think you asked me to play this before. Yeah, you have asked me to play this before. I'm like, come on, you want me to play the same song again? All right, see you guys later. Different songs, same guy. That's the same. Isn't it the same damn song?
A multilateral force. Sleep, baby, sleep. In peace may you slumber. No danger lurks, your sleep to encumber. We've got the missiles, peace to determine, and one of the fingers on the button will be German.
That's funny. All right. Happy birthday, Heather. I hope you guys do well. I'll see you guys. Good night and have a good weekend. God bless you all. Bye-bye.